Next item on the agenda is Palmyra Pride. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Kepler, and he just ran out.
Our Palmyra Pride tonight is Mr. Dresch, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, and he just ran to the maintenance building upon request to turn the air conditioning down. So, Mr. President, if we can come back to this agenda item when he returns.
That was a goof, huh?
Wow. I thought of saying something.
You should have said something. So hang out a couple of minutes. Okay, so we'll come back to Palmyra Pride. Next item on the agenda is President's Report, and I have nothing to report tonight. So we'll move on to visitor comments. The first person up is Jill Martin with the topic of Health and Safety Plan. Jill, you can make your way to the podium. Just as a reminder, visitor comments are open for a total of 5 minutes. So within that 5 minutes, about 30 seconds, I'll give you a cue, and if you'd just be so kind to cut yourself off at 5, that would be perfect. Okay, so Jill, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jill Martin, and I'll be reading a letter to you that you should have received, but I want everyone listening to hear it as well. I was going to spend part of my time reading the email I sent to all of you last Friday, but most here have already heard it. I will then conclude my time with a few additional comments. The letter is from Attorney Chadwick Schnee from Tucker Hall. Dear school directors, I have been retained as counsel on behalf of Ms. Jill Martin. This letter is intended to help inform the district concerning the application of the CDC January 29th, 2021 order as applied to the district in hopes of continuing to allow students the ability to breathe unrestricted on school buses. As you are aware, on July 6, 2021, the PDE issued correspondence stating that the CDC's January 29th order continues to require students to wear masks on school buses, even though the Secretary of Health's universal masking order has been lifted. Respectfully, the Department of Education is incorrect that the CDC's order applies, and I would ask the board to continue to not require masks on school buses. The CDC's order relies upon 42 USC section 264A as the basis for its authority. However, that provision only applies to actions taken to prevent the spread of diseases from foreign countries into the states or from one state into any other state. Additionally, the order also cites a regulation 42 CFR 70.2 for authority. However, that regulation specifically only applies to interstate issues rather than intrastate matters. In other words, the CDC does not have the power to regulate any actions occurring entirely within a single state. Here, the buses used by the district travel entirely within PA and involve the transport of PA students to and from a PA school district. As a result, the CDC lacks jurisdiction to decide whether district students must wear face masks while riding buses, and the district is not bound by the CDC's order. Accordingly, as CDC's order does not apply, and neither the PDE or the DOH has set forth any orders requiring students to wear masks on school buses, the district is free to continue allowing students to ride the bus without wearing a face mask. I am unaware of any other legal authority that would allow the district to require students to wear face masks, especially in light of the fact that the Commonwealth has ended the statewide emergency and lifted the universal masking order. My client is happy that masks are currently optional for in-person instruction for the coming school year, as well as for summer programming. However, should masks be once again required, please be advised that my client and many other parents are fully prepared to pursue all legal remedies available to them to prevent masks from being mandated, whether it be through litigation or through enrolling students in charter schools. Students have suffered enough during this pandemic, and it's time to allow all students the ability to breathe unrestricted. I would respectfully ask this board to ensure that students are not required to wear masks on school buses. Sincerely, J. Chadwick Schnee. I'd also like to reiterate that I'm very thankful that you have made masks and vaccines optional for your summer programming and in your draft health and safety plan. My special needs son is doing very well this summer, in large part to that decision. I'm extremely grateful. I know each of you who are parents want the best for your children. When you see them struggle, you know it is extremely difficult. Now imagine your child has extra needs and struggles more than most children, even to do things which come easily to most. Now imagine you had to quit your career, which you worked very hard for, to care for him. Please know that is where I'm coming from. Those are the shoes that I am wearing. My child, and many you have heard from, and many you have not heard from, cannot go back to that kind of abuse. We will not go away. We will not subject our kids to it any longer. Charter schools are fast becoming a viable option. If everyone who wants to get the vaccine can, teachers, administrators, other staff, and it's safe and effective, then what sense does it make to cover the faces of children? Not one child has died in PA from COVID, according to the PA DOH, but a 16-year-old child died here in Pennsylvania after taking her second dose of the Pfizer vaccine. There's ID 1420630. You can look it up. Simple logic concludes that if the population of students have zero statistical risk from death or serious complication from this virus, and the population that interacts with these students are able to receive intervention that they believe reduces the risk of contracting or becoming seriously ill from the virus, then no further mitigation should be required in the form of masks. Additionally, any requirement for a segment of the population to wear a mask will undoubtedly contribute to heightened anxiety and depression for these students. If there really was some logic to all of this, then where were the masks the last few years during flu season? According to the CDC, there have been many more pediatric deaths from flu than COVID. Parents still sent their children back to school. I also watched the All-Star game on Tuesday night, stadium full of unmasked children and adults. So explain to me why we need to mask our children to keep us safe. Please do the right thing by our children and keep masks optional on buses and in schools. And please keep the experimental vaccine optional. Please let parents make the decisions for their children. I really applaud you for your draft plan, and I pray that you would approve it and keep those things optional. Thank you. Thanks.
Next up for visitor comments is Faith Fox.
Hi, my name is Faith Fox. I spoke at your last meeting. I'm here representing my two kids who I currently have enrolled in the district, and also the other hundreds of parents that have reached out to me related to this topic. I want to first thank you very much for your current health and safety plan and making masks optional for the upcoming fall year and also for this summer. Last year, we were all taken off guard. There were many things that changed and were moving very fast. And most of us were unaware of what cyber schools had to offer. And quite frankly, if we wanted to homeschool, we would have done it prior to last year. So this year, many of us have prepared ourselves and have researched cyber schools. We've come to the conclusion that there are cyber schools that have curriculum that are highly competitive. And in fact, some of the electives that they offer are not offered at Palmyra School District. We also know that per law, we are allowed to participate in Palmyra area school districts athletics and clubs, even if our kids are registered in cyber school. We also realize, based on an estimate, that it costs $12,000 per student to go to cyber school. If that student has special needs, you're looking at somewhere in the realm of $24,000 to send that kid to cyber school. So just taking 100 students without special needs, you're looking at $1.2 million. We've looked at your budget and we saw that you have $596,000 set aside for cyber schools, and it's reduced from last year because you believe that people will come back to school this year. And I believe you're right, if masks are optional on buses and in school. We also noticed that $413,000 was put towards improvement of Cougar Academy, which is Palmyra's cyber program that's comparable or trying to be comparable to cyber schools. Unfortunately, I believe that's an absolute waste of time. There's not enough money that Palmyra School District has that can put towards cyber school of their own that can compete with with cyber schools that have been in business for more than 20 years. What I'm asking for you to do is to continue doing what you do best and be brick and mortar school. We have an amazing school district. I realize that you will probably be given many different directives from the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Pennsylvania Department of Health, but that's why we elect school board members. They're here to represent the stakeholders. And last year, there was a survey that was sent out, and 63% of the people who took the survey were uncomfortable with our kids being masked. Yet, they were masked last year. And we've seen the abuse that has occurred from that. What's different this year is that the parents have educated themselves, and we are fully prepared to move to cyber school, and the cyber schools are prepared to take us. So what I ask is that you please stand fast to whatever directives come down, listen to your stakeholders, put the health back into the parents' hands, and don't restrict their freedoms again. I thank you for your time, and I applaud you with the plan that you are currently looking at.
Okay, so we'll move back to Palmyra Pride.
Mr. Drash, don't sit down for long. Come on up, please. So, as Steve makes his way up tonight, the business of taking care of facilities, maintenance, cleaning, disinfecting is a difficult task in any year. And this past year, more difficult than any other. The sheer amount of cleaning and disinfecting we had to do. You and your assistant, Kim Nixon, did a tremendous job. Short-staffed and continue to keep our buildings clean, waxed this summer, plugging away. That's aside from this accomplishment. Over the last year to 2 years, Heath has been continuing to, on his own time, partake in PASBO, or the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials, to further his education. And I'm pleased tonight to announce that Heath has been recognized as a Pennsylvania Certified School Facilities Manager. I think this is a renewal, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
It's your initial.
There's only 2 of us.
2 people in Pennsylvania. Okay. I was thinking for some reason this was a renewal for you. But Heath, credit to you tonight for meeting the rigid personal, ethical, and professional standards established by this program. And on behalf of the school board, the administration, and PASBO, we present you tonight with a certificate and your pin as a certified school facilities manager. Thank you. And it's getting cooler in here. Thank you.
Really, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to curriculum.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. We last met on June 24th. Dr. Spagnolo reviewed the 2021 summer learning opportunities for students. Dr. Spagnolo reviewed the student retention / failures for 2020-2021 school year. Laura Weidler spoke on student learning loss and inquired about ESSER funds. Gregory Ott asked about access to curriculum. Meeting adjourned at 7:23. I have no motions, and the next meeting for curriculum will be Thursday, August 26, 2021, after the regular board meeting in the auditorium or via Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hutt. So we'll move on to staffing and administration. Mr. Guy.
The staffing and administration meeting minutes. We had the second reading of board policy 246, which is the school wellness. We also had the PSBA voting delegate discussion, and we also talked about emergency instructional time pamphlet and section 520.1. Finally, we dealt with the health and safety plan, and out of those, we have some motions that we need to deal with tonight. First motion to approve the second reading of board policy 246, school wellness.
I have a motion to approve the second reading of board policy 246, school wellness. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Hudson. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
No changes since your last review.
Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We have a motion to approve staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administration consent agenda. Again, Dr. Kepler, do you want to make any comments?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Guy. It's my pleasure to highlight the first item on our agenda tonight. Angela Hepner as the recommended candidate for Director of Human Resources. Angela's here tonight. If you just, Angela, say hi back there. Angela is coming to us with 8 years of experience in the public education realm in HR and several years of prior experience in the private industry before that. We're excited to have her join our team. In fact, in anticipation of that, she spent the last 3 days with our administrative team in our annual administrative retreat. Not a, when I say retreat, nothing elaborate. We were in the middle school library for 3 days working, 8-hour meeting days, planning for goals and comp plan that we'll be sharing with this board and community in the meetings to come. So Angela, welcome to Palmyra. I will say she has a 5-hour drive ahead of her tonight, so upon her approval, she is going to sneak out the back. So you know why she's leaving. And I'm also excited tonight, Dr. Kathy Knudsen is down front, recommending to this board that KK transfer from her supervisor of instructional technology and online learning to our director of informational technology position. And we're in the process of looking and interviewing for Dr. Knudsen's replacement in her current position. We have several new hires before you tonight for vacant teaching positions. 3 of those were due to resignation, 1 with a D being due to a transfer from middle school to high school for a Spanish teacher. As I go down through the long-term sub-hire, the associated mentors for those folks, short-term substitute.
2 custodial hires, which in this environment is highly notable.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Well done.
I'd like to just point out and thank, we have a late retirement here as we enter summer, Tracy Batiglia. We thank Tracy for her years of service to the district and the public education, but has chosen to retire. So we are looking for an additional reading specialist in the district. And as Darcy said, some new hires in the custodial rank. And also point out, I'm excited to see this. I was talking to Mr. Dresch earlier. A recent graduate, 2021 graduate, has been working for the summer with us and the crew for summer help. Has done a great job, and we're looking to bring him on full time as an evening roving custodian. Nicholas worked at Song Middle School today, and he was working hard. Also, for you, an MOU regarding that. We entered tonight short 7 custodial positions, several 8 positions, like all industries trying to find folks willing to work and help. So looking at incentives to try to be able to fill our positions. And then for you tonight are our list of spring coaches based on contract. It's that time of year to renew spring coaches. There are a few you won't see, track and baseball, that we're waiting for additional paperwork and the volunteers. And finally, the contract that we looked at in committee for the Avena Healthcare Nursing Services Agreement.
And this year, this is just for substitute services to have that available. Last year, it was actually a full-time position.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administration consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gregorian. Any further questions, comments, or concerns?
The MOU, has that been presented for any initial feedback? Are we voting on it without having them have seen it at all in any shape to make comment?
No, we've met with officials from Local 464, and that they had actually, at the last meeting, they had made one additional request to reimburse clearances that for renewals of existing employees, and I had brought that back in June and got the okay to add that piece.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Just before you go on, Mr. Guy, in case you have an agenda, the agenda might say that we went from B to G. Unfortunately, on our agenda manager, Dr. Kepler, it's listed as C, so we're not in sync. So we will go back to the next item, which I believe, according to agenda manager, is the collective bargaining agreement, which is D, which is C on that paper.
Okay, motion to approve the new collective bargaining agreement between Palmyra Area School District and Palmyra Area Education Association from September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2026, and this is a roll call vote.
I have a motion to approve the new collective bargaining agreement between the Palmyra Area School District and the Palmyra Area Education Association from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2026. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Hudson. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, let's start with the roll call vote.
And we will begin with Mr. Kreiser. Kreiser,
Yes.
Krikorian,
Abstain.
Hutt,
Yes.
Hold on just a second.
Connell,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
God,
Yes.
Gilligan,
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
So 7-4, 1 abstention, motion carries.
And we have a press release available for the terms of the contract.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the Palmyra Area School District Health and Safety Plan for 2021-22 year. And this is also a roll call vote.
I have a motion to approve the Palmyra Area School District's Health and Safety Plan for the 2021-22 school year. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Krikorian. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I have a question. Clearly, the community has had a presence here with regard to masking. And I know our health and safety plan as it stands does not have masking as mandatory in the buildings. It appears as if there was a question as to whether or not masks would be required on busing. And I believe there's also potentially a couple of different legal opinions with regard to potential loss of federal funding if we don't comply with CDC guidance with regard to masking in public transportation. So I guess I'm looking for some help, Bernie, if you have any information from our solicitor with regard to that.
Certainly. I'll be happy to just to preface this conversation, as this is a topic that is ever changing and changing rapidly. Last Friday, superintendents in the Commonwealth received a joint communication from the Pennsylvania Department of Health Secretary and the Secretary from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, stating they are reviewing the new CDC release and would communicate with us sometime in the coming week. I was hoping to have that communication before tonight. I do not. So I'm hopeful that that will help us shed some light on this ever-changing situation. I believe that as we sit here tonight, things may look different come August 30th with our first day of school with further information. But as of right now, our solicitor's opinion is that the CDC's guideline, which I have the mask order listed for you there, that dates back to January. His review is that it does have a binding impact to us in our operations, that we are to follow that guideline, and it does have a legal and binding oversight for us.
But just sorry to interrupt you, but the binding aspect of it is that, I guess under the law, they can't force us, but they can withhold the stimulus money or prevent us from getting it.
That's the stick that is over our heads.
What is that amount?
2.45 million in the ESSER 3 funds. They're the only set of monies of the stimulus funds that we've had any oversight or requirement for. That the guidelines that are set to us for the posting of this new health and safety plan and submission are all part of those funds.
Is it fair to say we would have a $2.45 million hole in our budget?
We have many one-time expenditures that are funded, contracts signed based on stimulus dollars, yes.
The one you've approved so far was the one for the 2 mental health counselors from PA Counseling.
So as it's presented tonight, the roll call vote is based on masks on buses to align to that CDC guidance and our solicitor's advice thereon.
Our solicitor prepared language for your review that should the plan follow CDC guidelines. The language is proposed. In red is anything that varies from the initial plan. That should we adopt a plan, try to enlarge that for folks. I think we're getting better. Can you see that in the back? So what his recommended language would read is under federal order issued in January 2021 in the American Rescue Plan, or ARP, the federal government and the CDC require face coverings regardless of vaccination status when on public transportation, which includes on school buses operated by public and private school systems. Students and staff will adhere to the face covering guidance on this form of public transportation. Our solicitor continues to recommend that, as we had language previously, this is going to be an ever-changing situation. We've already said we'll have to continue to monitor this. Once this plan's approved, could it very well have different guidance by start of school? It very well could. What he recommends is that the superintendent, myself, be authorized or have interim authorization to make changes to a plan should guidance come out and we don't have a public board meeting for you to formally approve a change, that I would be authorized to make that change. So if you would approve this tonight as a board and have the language that masks are required on a school bus, we get information from the Department of Ed, the Department of Health, the CDC that changes that. We don't have a board meeting. I would be authorized to make that change and then have it updated and approved at the next board meeting.
And what we're approving tonight is our draft one.
Not necessarily. What you're approving tonight, we're putting into place a formalized plan,
The formalized plan.
but always up for review. The ARP requires a minimum of a 6-month review, while that likely over the next 2 to 3 years, reviewing every 6 months our plan in order to continue to receive funding. We have to show we've reviewed it in a public meeting, reaffirm it at a minimum of every 6 months.
Yeah, minimum. So
Correct.
should we wish to review it and change it more frequently, we're allowed to do that, but it's at minimum of 6 months.
That's correct.
So in the case of the wording from the solicitor, interim authorization simply means until the next opportunity for our board to formally review and vote on a formal alteration of the plan.
That is correct.
And would we, I guess before I vote, would we be moving forward with the understanding that upon any sense from the PDE or DOH that no funding will be withheld, or they don't believe the CDC is binding as per our current solicitor opinion, that you would in that interim immediately remove this requirement?
I would want some direction from this board, but yes, our intention.
I mean, before I vote on it, I guess I don't know how to do that, Mr. President, but I think that my vote would be contingent on making sure that Dr. Kepler would revoke that if the guidance so allowed.
I would love to have that guidance from you before making that decision, just simply so it's, I understand where you, the board, are at on that topic. But that would be my recommendation as superintendent to you.
That's the only way I would vote for this, is if that's the understanding that I would have of how you would apply that.
Correct. I mean, please understand, we're talking about a situation here that frankly doesn't make sense. That's my direct opinion to you. We're talking about 60, 65 students riding a bus that the CDC says must wear a mask. Take our high school, for example. They're going to walk in among 1,150 students that aren't masked. That doesn't, where we have the power, currently the local authority to make that decision, but we're told we don't have that authority to make it on a bus. But that's what we're told right now, that if we do provide public transportation and not require a mask, we're in jeopardy of losing that funding.
So I certainly think it's in our best interests, since the kids are not in school now and we are not running buses now, correct?
We have minimal transportation for extended school year operating currently. And leading into tonight, we've maintained an unmasked student population riding. We were looking at tonight, driving where we go on Monday.
How many students are we transporting?
I'm going on a wild guess. Dr. Setlock and Carolyn Richards handle that. I'm thinking less than 20 district-wide.
All the kids are special needs?
They are students with special needs, yes, in an extended school year based on IEPs. It's going well.
But if we approve this tonight, you are now masking those 20 children on that bus.
If that is, yes, if that's the direction we need to go, our solicitor's recommendation is that we would need to do that.
But I thought that those that fall under whatever that code number is don't have to wear masks in the first place.
504?
504, 405.
No.
No, not necessarily. A student with an IEP or a 504, there's no direct guarantee they don't have to wear a mask. We've worked with families throughout the course of last year. Some of our students with the most significant needs worked IEP goals in and building up, I'll use the word stamina for lack of a better word, where they were learning to wear a mask or the sensory ability to wear a mask. And it went fairly well for, I'll say, all kids.
Yeah, you did a great job.
I think you said it well, it's kind of silly. It is silly. I think my struggle is it worth the risk for moving $2+ million?
Particularly in a county that has already run that risk and lost.
The question is, do you want to be
I
handcuffed?
I don't want to have a
by-
public discussion.
I understand that,
And please,
but that's the truth.
But-
Do you want to be handcuffed by money?
the discussion's not public, so thank you.
But I said,
Please.
So as I recall, we just passed a 3.75, 3.8 right, percent tax increase that was required just to fill everything we needed, knowing we had ESSER funds coming. So even that tax increase was reliant on this $2.45 million. So without that $2.45 million, to Greg's earlier point, we are in a huge hole. Correct?
In large part, yes. Some of those ESSER funds, one-time money, were very wise to use it on one-time expenditures. Not all of it. Some of it we're using for some provisions with salary, et cetera, to help our bottom line at the end of the year. But knowing those one-time funds are gone away, and we have to have the revenue to provide the programs, resources, staffing that we have in the future.
And I'm very hopeful that we can move towards not masking on buses. But the reality is also, there's a spike in cases, and we could be looking at a different scenario. So we have to be cognizant that factors are going to change on both sides of this. And so if we have a plan in place that makes sense based on current guidance, we evaluate as we go forward.
Now, my recommendation is that we would place this on the committee agenda for August 12th. Gives us an additional time for this board to review. Are there any changes to guidance at that time? And allow you to evaluate, give direction, and prepare for August 26th board meeting if there's any potential changes.
But we have to approve tonight based on PDE reg.
We're required to post a plan to the district's website by the end of July.
Okay.
This is your only board meeting in July.
No, I mean, I'm not trying to, now the words are escaping me, but I'm not trying to abscond our responsibility, but I think you just listen to some of the comments even this evening, like, we would have had no funding. And it wasn't a board vote, it wasn't a board elective for some of the things that occurred. These are statewide things, statewide decisions. And I'm sometimes shocked at the protests here, but the lack of protest to the state officials that hamstring our funding, that pass the requirements, that put the additional costs on us just to keep schools open as we did. I don't think people are aware of that. Certainly we don't have the comments that come in here that seem to have an appreciation of that. And is it silly? Absolutely. But it's not like it's silly just in schools. The All-Star game was referenced earlier. If you flew to that All-Star game, you wore a mask. And if you didn't get on the plane. Are we upset about that? I didn't hear that part of it. If you rode the train to that game, you had to wear a mask. Those aren't decisions that the people at the baseball stadium made or Major League Baseball made. They're decisions from outside entities that put them in that situation and others that force those requirements. I just think sometimes that, you know, I don't know how to sit here and say that I'm willing to be the one that says, well, I'm fine if we lose $2.5 million. Because then when that happens and we raise taxes, then we get the boos and additional slander. We did exactly what was asked. We lose money, we raise taxes, then we get, there's this horrible cycle where I don't know how to process the comments sometimes with what seems to be not maybe a full context or full depiction of the pictures by which the boundaries and parameters are placed upon us. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. Again, I'm only comfortable moving forward with voting yes if I can get some sense from my colleagues that we're okay with Dr. Kepler taking the position that the minute the solicitor or PDE or DOH give the requirement or give the feedback that the CDC guidelines are no longer binding on us for our stimulus funding, that we immediately revoke the requirement.
And that's the point of that sentence.
I believe it is, but it just says it's his authorization. He can use it or not use it. I'll vote for this if we are on the opinion he will immediately use it.
So it's very clear that the will of the board is to move to that direction.
Yes. I just want to make sure.
And I'm appreciative of that.
I want to make sure of that.
Yeah, I don't think
I certainly don't want to be on an island with that decision. I appreciate your support in that direction.
And that's why I wanted it stated in a public meeting.
Yes. I appreciate that. Thank you.
My concern then just remains the delta between bus for the 20 individuals to continue their summer school who, if we approve this tonight, they too will be wearing a mask until that other guidance comes forward.
That would be our solicitor's recommendation.
And what we will do.
What we will have to do.
So can we take the bus piece out and then reevaluate what it looks like in August and put it in?
I think we can do that without taking it out, Chris. I mean, I think if we're saying that we're going to evaluate this on August 17th, or whatever the date was, that would, 12th, that would give us an opportunity to evaluate based on guidance.
Right, I'm thinking more of the kids that are going to extend it from that point.
Correct.
So the question becomes, does the regulation say we are posting it or we are implementing it? And did our solicitor opine on that?
That's interesting.
It's my understanding we have an ability to post a draft plan without formal approval. However, that is against our solicitor's advice.
You didn't answer the question that I asked. And I'm not an attorney, but I work with a lot of them.
Yes, ask it
Is the
again.
guidance from PDE that we post a draft plan or that we implement a plan? Or post and implement? Because if the regulation is thou shalt post what thou intends to do in 21-22, then it would seem to me that we are not at this time forced to implement.
Dr. Setlock just sent me a text to say that there are 4 more days of ESY. I don't know if that makes a difference. And that there are many more than 20 kids that are riding a bus.
So I guess at the end of the day, can we look at it from the standpoint of what the hell does the effective date have to stay on this? can the effective date say August 13th?
Well, let's go further. The effective date could be July 31st if there's only 4 more days. Then this is a non-issue, correct?
That would be
That's what
correct.
I just heard her say.
Right, that's even better.
I mean, the guidelines are still there.
We just,
But
not
ESY
for those kids that are riding right now.
But if we didn't have this board meeting until next week,
So just change
we
that.
would have had time and then
Correct.
we would beat that clock.
Correct.
So, Jim, if you look on
And
page
so,
5,
yeah, I agree,
it
if you
says
make the
July
effective
30th,
date July 31st,
But it says here effective date of the plan
Yeah,
itself
yeah,
is July 16th.
Yeah, it says.
I'd just love to find a way to leave the language in to keep our funding not at risk without actually having to implement until we quote unquote have to post the plan. So I guess if we haven't asked the solicitor that question, I think it's worth asking. Because then we solve all the problems, I think.
Well, and again, I'd like to just double down on that by making the effective date of this after our current school year.
Which could be as early as 4 days from now.
July 29th is the last day.
So can we make July 31 the effective date? We'll still post it.
Certainly can, yes.
Can we do that? I don't know how to amend the motion, Mr. President. I'd like to do that.
You don't have to amend the motion because you're approving the plan, so if you
Yeah,
change
we
the plan.
Can we change the
the
plan to
effective
July
date, it's
31st?
changed in the plan.
Okay with that?
The regulation
And just
says
to
that
be-
July 31st is the date we post it, right?
That's correct.
that's the effective
So
date.
let's make the effective date July 31st, problem solved. Can we do that now?
I can do that now.
And just a clarification, I misspoke or misread. She didn't say there's more than 20 kids on the bus. That was a previous email. So
Don't even
There's
have to
3
worry
kids
about
at my
that.
son's bus.
I
3.
apologize.
We don't even have to worry about that. If we can
Correct.
make the effective date the same date as the posting date, then we've just bought ourselves to the end of July for additional guidance.
Thank you.
I am pulling up the Word version so that I am able to make edits so that we have a formal plan that you're adopting tonight.
While we're at it, perhaps we could make all the font black again? Were you gonna say that? I'm sorry.
And as soon as I get it up, I will, for the public, put that back on display.
And Dr. Kepler, in the interim, since we have such a time until the next meeting, when you do receive the communique that you're expecting, can you please notify us?
Be forwarded to you immediately.
Gracias.
Okay. This is the Word version. The direction I'm hearing from you is the initial effective date, July 31st, with the date of last review, July 15th.
Lawyer, but I feel like that works.
That's good. That's good stuff right there.
And my red font was simply to highlight what was changed. We will put that back to black font and post that to our web should you adopt this.
Thank you. And Dr. Kepler, just by note, I think there might be some dates at the end as well. You have to double check.
Any other comments? If not, let's do our roll call vote.
And this will begin with Mr. Krikorian.
Yes.
Hutt,
Yes.
Connell,
Yes.
Fisher. Yes. Dodd,
Yes.
Gilligan. Yes. Hudson,
Yes.
Riser.
Yes.
Eight votes for, 0 against, the motion carries.
And the night of setting records for staffing and administration. Motions. Motion to approve the emergency instructional time template and appendix A, weekly schedule for 2021-22 as required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education.
I have a motion to approve the emergency instructional time template and Appendix A weekly schedule for 2021-22 as required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Putt. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
This is the one we looked at before, does not encompass snow days.
That is correct. This has nothing to do with snow days, or the flexible instructional days under law that were approved to have some virtual days when we have snow. This is simply no direct intent. School code speaks to seat time, students in school. In a traditional year, students not present, it doesn't count as a day. Where PDE is authorized for 21-22 for the second year, an ability to offer virtual days should that need arise. This simply prepares us, should we have to make that decision, or the Commonwealth make that decision as they did March 13th, 2020. So again, it's not our intent. We want kids in classrooms.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The motion to approve the resignation for the purpose of retirement of Darcy Brenner Smith, Director of Business Affairs, effective April 1st, 2022.
I have a motion to approve the resignation for the purpose of retirement of Darcy Brenner Smith, Director of Business Affairs, effective April 1st, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm happy if you don't second it.
Does that mean she has to stay?
Who gave me the
I'll
second?
second.
Have a second from Putt. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I guess just for educational purposes, what is the value or purpose of this motion? I'm going to vote no, because I don't want her to leave. So is she going to stay? Do we have the ability to force that? Like whether we vote on it or not, is she going to?
I don't think so.
No, I do think we should use this comment time and probably all of the comment time we have between now and the date that she leaves to just like make sure every member of the community who's watching her in the room knows that we have been very blessed these last 20-some years to have Darcy at the helm of our business affairs. She has seen us through things that most schools could never have gotten through. So Darcy, I for one, am going to talk about you at every meeting I get a chance until you leave. This community owes you a great deal for your service to the district.
Amen.
Yeah, I would echo that. Darcy, if you don't know, is an alum of the Palmyra Area School District. We won't talk about what year. The pride that she takes as an alum was put into her day-to-day job. The thing that Darcy's most proud of is the team that she's built in the business office. Tanya's here representing a member of that team as the Assistant Director of Business Affairs, folks in payroll, HR. What Darcy's done to build a team has been remarkable. And it's a team that's it's not as large as many teams in districts our size, and they get the job done. Time and time again, Darcy's sought additional revenue sources. Most recently, I haven't done a survey, but I'm aware of one other district that sought FEMA money over the last year. Darcy's brought over $50,000 into this district and is sending out another application, seeking more funds, taking that extra time to do that. So to say that this will be a whole come April is an understatement. We are poised to advertise this position shortly with the intention of having someone join Darcy, I believe that first Monday in January, I think it's the 3rd, with an ability to spend January, February learning from Darcy. And then Darcy will have some vacation time, obviously, and then her effective retirement date. So it's a bittersweet pleasure, Darcy, to congratulate you on a wonderful career and pending retirement.
Thank you.
As someone who works with K-12 schools across the country, I have clients in California, Florida, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania. Darcy, you really are second to none. Skills, experience, commitment. I interacted with a lot of folks in your position. I've not seen your equal. And beyond that, for those that can hear me, that are here tonight, look up what other districts, even in our own state, let alone across the country, have for accounting and finance departments within a school district our size. What Darcy has accomplished, the strategies and plans and programs she's put in place for us, she does so not only with her skill, but with resources far less than what are allocated and provided most other places you will find. You can feel free to look that up, and I think you'll be astonished at what she does with so little. I don't think we will fully recognize and realize you don't know what you have, what's going. I fear that day, but I do wish you the best and have nothing but thanks and admiration for you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
7-4, 1 against, the motion carries.
2 against.
2 against.
Was it Larry and Jim?
Did you really have to ask for it?
No,
I made it clear before.
I'm just pleased there were 5, so we don't have an issue.
Okay. Motion carries.
Okay, Mr. President, our next meeting will be August 12th. That concludes the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guy. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of new board member. We did not have anybody send in the resume or letter of interest by the deadline. So at this time, we will open this up to nominations. And just remind me, do we have to pass a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
And with a roll call vote as well.
With a roll call vote, okay.
And the vote required to fill a vacancy on the board is a majority of the quorum present and voting, so we need 5 votes.
So 5 votes. So I think the way we'll do this, if I remember correctly, we'll ask for nominations and we'll go through and vote. And then we make the motion, or do we have to make the motion to vote?
My recommendation is if any board member intends to nominate someone, we discuss that prior to making a motion. Once you make a motion to appoint a citizen to the board, and there's a second, you have to vote. I think it's fair and transparent that you know all potential motion or all potential nominations that are going to be made prior to the first motion. Helps you cast your vote, should there be more than one person that you intend to nominate.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. President, I'll simply say, the only legal requirement is that this board appoint somebody within 30 days. There's no legal requirement to advertise, invite folks in, interview. That is something that this board has historically done for purposes of transparency, and we're only going this route simply because we did not have anyone submit a letter of interest and resume.
I'd probably not make a nomination, Mr. President.
Hold on. Any questions? Okay, so I will open it up for nominations.
I'd proudly make the nomination of Steve Durr, alumnus of Palmyra, current member of the Cougar Foundation Board of Trustees, father of children in the district, member of several booster clubs, all around good individual.
Any other nominations?
I nominate Alicia Haldeman.
Okay. Any other nominations? So Steve is here. You're good. Is Alicia here? So you're good to. Any other nominations? Okay, so at this time, we would need to make a motion. So somebody can make a motion to approve one of these or appoint one of these to our board.
Chris, is it appropriate or allowable to have the candidates at least introduce themselves?
You can ask that, certainly.
Okay.
But again,
Would we
all
do
this,
that in front of a motion or after a motion? Sorry.
you would do that before a motion.
Okay, may we
But-
do that?
There's no written
Okay.
way to do this.
Well, good, then let me
So-
just say, I would like to hear from both candidates, maybe 2 minutes, introduce yourselves, tell us why you're interested in doing this. That's
Alicia, you
okay.
want to go first? Yeah, come
Yeah,
up to the
great.
podium.
My name's Alicia Haldeman. I live on Buckville Road in Palmyra, and I am the mother of 2 children. My husband and I moved to the Palmyra Area School District of January 2020. Would it help if I read my letter?
I did, I think I've seen that, the one that was not submitted quite on time.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Just a little bit about yourself, why you want to do this, why you think you are a good fit, what you bring to the board.
My current job is a stay-at-home mom. So I've been at home with my children since my daughter was born in August of 2015. Prior to that, I worked in Child Protective Services for 5 years in Northern Dauphin. I worked with the state police, and prior to that, I worked in Lebanon County with CPS for 2 years. I'm very well versed in testifying in court, writing up court documents, did a lot of investigating, speaking with parents and children. I've also, throughout my life, I've lived in Sierra Leone, where I was the forerunner in starting a youth advocate program for child soldiers. I also was in Tanzania, where I listened to young girls who wanted a school. So we got a bunch of people together and we built them a girls' school. I lived in Arizona, and I worked with the Native court system with the Navajo and Pasquayaki. And that was basically to give the Native children a voice that were up for foster care placement. And we were looking to keep them on the reservation with their tribe so they wouldn't lose their heritage and their culture. I was in British Columbia and worked with the Carrier Natives there. In the Bahamas, I listened to Haitian refugee children. So just a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of schooling. I have a degree in applied psychology and theology. I did some of my studies in Chicago at Truman College. And in Chicago, I worked a lot with the homeless population there. In Arizona, I worked with the women in crisis shelters. My degree is from Penn State, but I did travel and a lot of my credits had to transfer and all that, so it took me a while to finish, but I eventually did. And my theology degree is from Lancaster Bible College, where I finished out. I did attend Alaska Bible College, and I was up there for about a year and worked with the Native population on the Mentasta Reservation in Alaska as well. I'm the oldest of 6 children. Like I said, I have a 4- and a 5-year-old now, who my daughter was in kindergarten last year, and she loved being in school in person. And this year she'll be going to 1st grade. And my son is going to be going into preschool, so he's not quite kindergarten yet. I don't know what else would you like to.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Very interesting background. Steve?
Hi, my name is Steve Durr. I'm a lifelong resident of Palmyra, graduate of Palmyra. I have 2 daughters, one who has graduated from Palmyra, one who will be an upcoming senior. I graduated from Elizabethtown College with a degree in accounting. I currently work for the Public School Employees Retirement System in the investment office, where I manage several of the portfolios there. And I feel like my background in accounting and finance would be beneficial to the district. As a lifelong resident, I know that this Palmyra School District is top-notch. You know, our test grades are off of the charts. Our spending per pupil is at the bottom of the charts, and I would just like to continue that tradition and help out in any way that I can. And as Jim said, I'm also a member of Cougar Foundation, working with the school district to raise funds. So happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, so at this time, a board member can make a motion to appoint Steve or Alicia to the open vacancy that we have on the board.
I move to appoint Steve Durr to the open vacancy on our board.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve Steve Durr, fill the appointment, to fill the vacant board seat. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Corey. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Further questions, comments, or concerns?
I make a motion for.
Well, we have a motion,
Oh, okay.
so we'll go through that motion.
Okay.
In order for, Jim made the motion for Steve, so Steve needs to get 5 votes to be appointed. If he gets the 5 votes, we won't do another motion. Everybody clear?
Just a comment. We had 2 very diverse candidates. And in trying to make the decision, it seems appropriate, at least for each of us, to evaluate what skill set this board will need. Especially now that both are provided. I think that's important for us all to think about.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, who's up first?
Mr. Putt,
Yes.
Connell,
Yes.
Fisher. Yes. God, Gilligan,
No.
Hudson,
Yes.
Kreiser,
Yes.
Gregorian.
Yes.
Okay, for 7 votes for Mr. Durr, 1 against, the motion carries. Steve, you now appointed to the board. You'll have to be sworn in. Alicia, thank you very much for coming up and sending us that letter and giving us some background. Thank you. Okay, so.
Chris, I certainly, with Alicia's background, it might benefit the ad hoc diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And it might be a way, Alicia, for you to engage in the board and for board members, future board members, to get to know you in the event you decide to run. It certainly sounds like your background would be a very good fit for that committee. They could use you.
Yeah, Lucia, at the end of this, I'm the board rep for that committee. I'd be happy to chat with you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is adjournment. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Putt,
Second.
second by Hudson. Any final questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, we're adjourned. We'll move into our.
Recording
committee.
stopped.
Anybody want to grab the paper from the back for buildings and grounds, Mr. President? Once again, I'm going to help keep things moving along here. We'll find out from Mr. Putt if there's any public comments.
There are no hand raised on the Zoom call. Mr. Kreiser.
We don't take it.
Oh, we don't.
Jeff, are there any names for buildings and grounds? If there's not, you can leave it back. All right, so we'll move on to finance then.
I'll
All righty, beginning this evening's agenda, our annual donations.
And as that's just what is in the budget, our normal annual donation to the Palmyra Library in the amount of $2,000.
Larry, the donations coming through. Excellent. Next, we have our district physician proposal through Lebanon Valley Family Medicine.
Last year, the big change that we made was that with the sponsorship from OAL, that included all the sports physicals being covered at no cost to students by the district. OAL has volunteered this year to take over the attendance at the 5 home football games, which had typically been in the school physician arrangement, and that was at a cost of $850. So our recommendation is to remove that, and in discussions with Lebanon Valley Family Medicine, they're completely in agreement with that, and we're fine with pulling that out of there. They have offered to continue serving in the role of school physician, and what that entails is consulting with school nurses, signing standing orders, signing off on weight certificates, weekly emails, things of that nature, at $550 a year. That's no change. It's been at that piece of it has been at that same rate. That this would make that for 4 years, staying at $550. And I'd also like to include that they still, they were charged, when they were doing the sports physicals, they were charging us for, this would be the 4th year, $20 per physical. I'd like to keep that provision in because there are times that the nurses ask for a school physical, for example, for a scoliosis check. There's maybe a handful of those done, maybe a dozen a year, but I'd like to keep that. And the motion would be to approve Lebanon Valley Family Medicine as a school physician for $550 plus $20 per physical. But this is a substantial decrease from what that had been several years ago. That had, before we made changes to this, we were spending in excess of $10,000 a year. So this gets that down to probably about a little over $600.
Questions on that? How about the district dentist proposal?
Recommending that we continue with the SMILE program. It's been very successful here. It's at no cost to the district. It's a mobile program where there's a mobile facility that pulls up, and again, that's offered at no cost. And we've heard very good things over the years. In fact, I've never heard any negative.
No, in fact, they actually do more enhanced dental care for students with parental approval, where they're actually doing some fillings, cavities, et cetera, that a typical dental program does not necessarily do, free of charge. And again, with parental consent.
And both of these, clearances are provided in both of these instances.
How about GASB 84, fiduciary activities update?
Tanya's going to take that one. She's been instrumental in implementing this change that we're required to implement under Government Accounting Standards Board.
We're implementing new rules for our fiduciary activities. The implementation had to be done by June 30th of 2021. There are 3 areas of fiduciary activities. It's private purpose, trust fund, and custodial funds. We're going to just go over the area of custodial funds, which is known for us as our student activities, our club accounts. The new rule affects student activity accounts and the reporting of the statement of fiduciary net position on the district's financial statements. Our student activity funds will now be categorized by how and who it is governed by. A true student activity fund is governed by students and has no administrative involvement by the school district, but it may have an advisor guiding decisions on fundraising and purchase of aid. Some examples of those kinds of clubs would be student council, Heat Club, the classes, like 2022, and can be kept in the current student activities fund. A student activity fund that is created to collect and disperse dollars without students truly governing the decisions is then classified as a government activity, and the funds need to be kept in the general fund. So some examples of that we currently have in our student activities account, the would be the middle school musical, choir activities, robotics, and marathon. Those clubs are truly run by the advisor. There's really not a whole lot of student involvement as far as decision-making with those clubs. So Darcy and I analyzed all of our activity accounts and determined the appropriate fund for each club with the consultation of where we moved 11 accounts from student activities account to the general fund. The total dollars that we transferred was a little over $52,000. And then to preserve the balance in each account, we'll be creating expenditure and revenue accounts for each of the new classified governmental club for reporting purposes. So they know that they're not going to lose their funds every year. We'll also be adding additional dollars to the assigned fund balance to reflect the balances in their club accounts. Currently, we use that assigned fund balance for tax appeals and dental claims. So that when you see that moving forward, that the other piece of that is going to be those club accounts.
Can I ask a question, Mr. President?
Yep.
So is this a presentation and disclosure? And I'm sorry, I have a hard time seeing this. So
What's that?
I'm just sorry, I have a hard time seeing, so if I'm not looking right at you, I apologize. I kind of have a sense of where you are, but, yeah. Is this a presentation and disclosure from our reporting? Like, so these were never captured under our general fund balance prior?
Not in the general fund, no. We have a separate fund for student activities, and that is in our financial statements.
Right. So, I mean, we've just changed where we're presenting those balances?
Some of them, yes.
Okay. And anything structural in terms of the account or the account management that's changed with this? The advisors are still the ones accessing the account?
Everything's changed except now it's going to go through the general fund instead of the student activities account.
Okay.
And you've seen them every month on the treasurer's report in
Correct.
the club accounts. It's the pieces that.
So it's just our financial disclosure presentation.
Now you'll see for the clubs that were mentioned, now you'll see those checks on the treasurer's report on the check register, when in the past
Gotcha.
they were part of clubs.
Gotcha. Okay.
But they're not district monies that are being used, they're just student club monies.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not funding any portion of their work.
Absolutely, you're not. Yes, they're
Yeah.
supported by revenue.
On a college level, these are called agency accounts, and so they carry over, but they're not part of the institutional balance.
Yeah, it's just in my opinion, it's a continued push by the Government Accounting Standards Board to reflect more of that revenue that's available to the district, to reflect that in the governmental activities through the general funds. It's something that when the Auditor General comes, it's definitely something that it's all of the state audits that I've participated in, is something they have looked at and commented on over the years. But this statement, with the effective date of this statement, it required us to look at it very closely and make these decisions.
And finally, a state budget update.
On the screen for our basic ed subsidy, ready to learn, and special ed subsidy, we're picking up an additional $485,000 that was not budgeted for by all instruction that we received and advice for budgeting, and based on what was being said by our legislators at the time. Several months before we adopted our budget, was not to expect anything, just to expect a flat budget. But with their discussions of subsidy funds, stimulus funds that they received, very pleased to see that come in $485,000 above what we budgeted and what we expected. That's a 5.5% increase. Last year, that line item was flat. What our trend and history has been, and what we use in our long-range projections, is about 3% per year increase. That's what our history's been. So if you look at the 5.5%, it gets us back to being on track to where we would have expected to be had we received an increase for the 2021 budget, and then what we're getting for 21-22. So good news. A few things that I'll just point out that didn't happen. There was no cyber charter reform. There was a lot of discussion of that. There was a piece in the governor's budget to reform for the funding formula that would have greatly helped Palmyra and other districts. That was not in there. There was a piece of $100 million that they called level up funding. And if you read how they marketed that level up funding, have it posted on, you would think that Palmyra, it would apply to Palmyra, because it's specific, in the presentation I attended from PASBO, it specifically said this was for growing enrollment districts versus shrinking districts, that's us, and low student spending. But when you actually looked into that, we were not on that list. There are 100 school districts on that list. And when I looked into what the criteria were for that funding being awarded, it was there was another piece that was acute and concentrated poverty rates. And if you look at where we are with that piece of the formula, that knocked us out of getting anything. But 100 school districts did receive that a portion of that 100 million of level up funding. And one last piece to point out, these are still estimated. For some reason, the state does not align, you know, when they come up with the funding formulas, they don't align it. They're going to use the 2021 data that we haven't even submitted yet for certain things like special ed spending, and then we'll get finalized amounts. So I don't expect huge changes, but you know, there can be swings in the actual data.
Darcy, is there any appealable grounds to go after that level up funding?
It's legislated. When I looked at, it's a formula. It's spelled out that you take the weighting based on the poverty and the acute and concentrated poverty. And then there is a piece that looks at, I believe special ed enrollment was in there, school spending, but it's a formula. So no, I can answer in a word, no.
Christine?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to item 1, the annual donation. I think everybody knows that I'm on the library board, and we are very grateful for the school district's contribution. I just would like to strongly suggest that maybe it's time to increase that. I've been on that board for 6 years, and it's been $2,000, and the work that the library does, and especially Phoenix Center and what that does for the kids, I would like to recommend that that be changed or increased from $2,000 to $3,000.
You can see if everybody supports it.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Is this the donation for the 21-22 fiscal year? So this is the year we've already budgeted the 2,000?
Correct.
Look, I'm not opposed to that. I would like to hear, I won't be here, I guess. I help the board to make a decision. If the library could be invited to present on the students they're serving, the programs they're running. I know, Larry, you do that as well, you know, during your library reports, but I mean, I guess I have some reservation about, we budgeted 2,000 for this year. And
I think, just my 2 cents, I mean, the library is definitely important. I've always been a supporter of the library. But we did budget this line item. And I think if we want to increase it, we should do that during the budget process.
that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying
The only reason why I said it was I don't think the opportunity came up during the budget process, because we were trying to make ends meet, things of that nature, but with some of the funding that we've gotten this year, And again, I need to emphasize what the Phoenix program does for our kids. That $1,000 is not inappropriate.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, Chris. I mean, just selfishly as a parent who had both of my children participate in the Phoenix Center, maybe not much else with the library, to be quite honest, but that program alone and what that offered me as a parent, to have my kid looked after and have those opportunities after school, and it's free, so that's not as good of a deal that exists. And, I mean, I would be okay with it. To Bev's point, there might be some benefit to having the library come and present some numbers on that enrollment, because I don't know how many folks in the community are really aware of what all goes into that Phoenix Center, how much programming and opportunity is offered for the kids with that. So I just biased with my experience. I mean, at $0 it costs you, my bang for my buck was pretty.
Right, and there's also annual giving, right, with the library as well.
Correct, that's right.
So could you request a presentation and then revisit?
When do you need that donation?
There's no timeline. We typically send it in August, but there's no timeline.
That's what the desire of the board is. I'd recommend the August curriculum meeting.
That would be great.
Mr. Guy, I'd be glad to reach out if you'd like me to.
Okay, thank you.
I think what we're looking for them to do is discuss the value, right? If they want us to increase the monetary contribution, I guess what we're looking, to the extent they're asking, we're looking for what is the return on the investment.
Are you willing to go above $3,000 if they come in and?
Harry, I'm trying to help you here.
Okay.
But, I think when we do look at support of external groups, there can't be a more important partner in the library.
No, for those middle schoolers, like I said, having lived through it myself with two of them, what it offers for working families, dual wage earner families, it was phenomenal.
Well, there's programs beyond that even, right? They run pre-K reading and curriculum programs, and story times, and summer reading programs with rewards for kids.
They also participate in our early learning nights, which we're hoping to return for the 21-22 school year, and they attend all of our early learning nights to provide information to our families.
And just a marketing plug, since Chris brought up, is a good point, because if you give to the United Way, you can direct your funds specifically through there to go to the Phoenix Center.
Thank you.
There was nobody that signed up for public comment for finance.
And that's all that we have for this evening.
So we'll move on to staffing and administration.
Okay. I think the only thing we have there is public comment.
Okay, since there was no sign up for public comment, staffing administration is closed. So we'll pack up here and move to executive session. Thank you, public, for attending tonight. Everybody have a good night.